Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Spectator Sports, covering sports from a spectator's point of view. This is episode number 116. I'm your host, Sebastian Fonseca. Before we get into covering another wild weekend in the NFL, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. If you guys are new to Spectator Sports and you want to help this channel grow, please do us a massive favor, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you want to get clips from this week's episode, we got that for you here on YouTube in our various playlists, as well as on TikTok. And if you want to enjoy Spectator Sports from an audio setting, we got that for you too. Link to the Spotify along with the TikTok and YouTube channel is all in the description. And let's get into today's content. What a finish. Jayden Daniels saves the Washington Commanders on a last-minute Hail Mary pass to steal a victory against his fellow rookie counterpart, Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. The Washington Commanders hosted the Chicago Bears in a duel between the top two picks in this past draft, and Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears offense was completely grounded despite having 2 weeks to game plan and build off of the fantastic win against the Jacksonville Jaguars 2 weeks ago. Remember that Jayden Daniels was coming into this game with a rib injury that he sustained last week against the Carolina Panthers. And despite all these things working against the Commanders' favor, they honestly dominated for much of this game. Leading 12-0 heading into the final frames of the third quarter, this was only when the Chicago offense finally woke up. DeAndre Swift took a long rushing touchdown to cut the lead to 5, and we headed into the final frame of the Bears-Commanders with the Bears having a chance to go ahead with a touchdown, but instead they decide to call back their 85 Bears days. And I don't know what's with this town and just harping with one Super Bowl championship, an all-time great team, yes. But the references, the refrigerator, the monsters of the Midway, it just gotta stop because they try to get too cute, trying to have a backup center take it in for a big man touchdown, but he fumbles. Washington recovers and it takes off a scoring opportunity off the board. And with that, the Bears get another opportunity, thankfully, and this time they convert, go 15-12 with 25 seconds left in the game. But this is when all hell breaks loose in Landover, Maryland. Jayden Daniels leads the Commanders with a couple of chunk plays, and these were both given up pretty easily by Matt Eberflus' defense. And on the final play, we're already having Tyrique Stevenson kind of mouth off at the Commanders fans, which we'll get into very soon, but he's not paying attention. Play goes off. His back is turned to the offense, and then he finally gets into the play as Jayden Daniels is running every which way and finally chucks a pass with a lot of arc on it, and Stevenson knocks the ball up into the air instead of knocking it down, and it's into the waiting arms of Noah Brown. Walk-off touchdown, and probably one of the most epic finishes I've seen in recent NFL history. This was really of epic proportions, and what a win for the Commanders, and what a heartbreaking loss for the Chicago Bears, because looking into the mistakes that they made, these come to fundamental mistakes made by Matt Eberflus and his staff and not having his players set up for success, and really a lot of breakdowns. Firstly, let's talk about the trick play with the big man touchdown. They were trying to be too cute at the goal line. I thought that this was a terrible, terrible play call. Bad decision, but they made up for it later. Well, on the final drive, there was a lot of mistakes made by Matt Eberflus and his staff, where firstly, you're giving up a couple of chunk plays way too easily. You should play coverage because honestly, with 25 seconds, you never know if Washington is trying to play for a field goal. They still have an opportunity to tie this and send it into overtime. Their kicker has a pretty good leg. Who knows? Well, they play very deep, and they give up 2 chunk plays that get them to about midfield in about 10 seconds. The second one was very, very bad because I just thought that you could have funneled Terry McLaurin in and then have them run out of time because you want to protect the sidelines at this point. That's an extra defender that you have in your disposal, but you're like, nah, You can take the 13 yards, Terry, it's fine. We don't really care. You're not going to score on us anyways. It's impossible. And they also had 3 timeouts. Matt Eberflus could have taken some time each play. Hey, let's cool it. They still have to go to full length of the field. Let's get our defense aligned. Let's get everybody known on what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do, knock the ball down. Basic kind of last-minute fundamentals of setting up your defense to close out a victory. You've seen so many times just before the ball's about to be snapped, that coach is running up, call timeout because somebody's over there mouthing off at the fans. And I mean, Caleb was trying to get that going, but it seems that nobody on the Chicago Bears staff was aware that Tyrique Stevenson is not even paying attention on the game's final couple of plays. And in that process, again, the timeouts are bad, but you don't coach how to execute a final Hail Mary, where it's one thing to knock the ball up, but then Kevin Byard loses Noah Brown altogether. He's supposed to be between Noah Brown and the ball at all times. And for whatever reason, he loses containment of Noah Brown because he's trying to go after the ball, and that tips the ball up. There's nobody there. If he sticks with Noah Brown, that he can take him out because the ball's already been tipped. He can tackle him, he can slam him to the ground, whatever it is. They're not going to be able to call anything. There's no PI after a ball has already been tipped. This goes into executing and stopping a Hail Mary before it even gets started. The other aspect is that why not rush 5 instead of rushing only 3 and deploying a spy? Because at this point, how many guys do you need to cover a Hail Mary at this point? You have 2 safeties, some cornerbacks, and if you want, you have a big guy out there. Get one of your biggest wide receivers there to knock the ball down as well. We've seen Julio Jones do it in the past with the Atlanta Falcons. Why not have DJ Moore out there? Something like that. With rushing 3 and having a spy, are you just thinking that Jaden is going to escape that and go all the way down the field 50 yards for a scramble touchdown? I mean, that's impossible. Just go back a week ago between the Lions and the Vikings, because in that sequence, they swallowed up Sam Darnold and they didn't even get a pass off to even attempt a Hail Mary. So if you rush 5, set the guys back in coverage, I think you get the job done either way, because they're just outmanned. Offensive linemen at that point were tired, they don't have enough juice. And the other final appalling thing is no timeouts and then no Montez Sweat on the field. Montez Sweat wasn't on the field on the last play of the game. If you call a timeout, noticing Stevenson mouthing off, noticing the defense isn't really aligned, noticing that Montez Sweat, your best defender, isn't on the field, is a very, very bad miscue by Matt Eberflus. And I have not been the biggest fan of Matt Eberflus since joining the Chicago Bears. I thought with last year, with them shipping out Justin Fields, I thought that made sense. Take out Matt Eberflus as well. 2 seasons, he's compiled a 10-24 record. And the first season was 3-14, the second one was 7-10 with an 0-3 start. This guy hangs his hat on defense, and these defensive miscues from no Montez Sweat to the lack of timeouts, in not disciplining Tyrique Stevenson, not having Kevin Byard on the last play of the game attached to Noah Brown to prevent the ricochet catch. These are all coming back to Matt Eberflus. He's the guy that's the defensive-minded head coach. And to pair that with Caleb Williams when you had an opportunity to go out and get one of these hotshot offensive guys, because now if somehow they don't make the postseason, then you waste a year of Caleb Williams and this team with a defensive-minded head coach when you could have gotten an offensive-minded head coach. So they're 4-3. This is not the end of the world, but it certainly is a heartbreaking loss. And now the season kind of hangs in the balance because they might be able to right the ship short term, but I'm just going to be always walking on eggshells thinking, what is the next gaffe for Matt Eberflus and the Chicago Bears to blow a late game lead like we saw on Sunday against the Commanders. So Tyrique Stevenson, for whatever reason, decides to taunt the Commanders fans mid-play and then proceeds to get into the scrum and not only attack the ball by tipping it upwards, but then it ricochets to Noah Brown for the game-ending score. But he has a track record here. He did the play before. Nobody saw it on the Bears coaching staff. And then if you rewind back to week 2, he was mouthing off at Nico Collins, and Nico did let his emotions get the best of him where he pushed Stevenson, and Collins was the guy that was hit with the personal foul. So that might be fine, but the next play, Nico Collins gets so aggravated or so triggered by Tyrique Stevenson's antics that Nico Collins scores a touchdown on the next play. Go look at the tape. So there's a track record here of this guy and his antics getting the best of him, costing this team points at critical junctures and even games at this point. He's going to run a lot of laps. He's going to have some type of punishment. And I think a benching would be a good way to start. It just sends a good message. He apologized to Chicago. He apologized to the fans. That's all fine and dandy, but you have a track record out there, man. Like, you're consistently not paying attention and you're letting your antics put yourself ahead of the team. And I think if he does anything remotely close to this, you have to cut him, because you have to make an example out of this, because this type of play, this type of behavior, especially late, isn't acceptable in any NFL franchise. And if he has to pay by losing his job, then so be it. Jalen Hurts outduels Joe Burrow in a clash of two of 2020's best QB prospects. Joe Burrow obviously was the top overall pick, and these two didn't get a chance to go head-to-head back in Philly 4 years ago, but this was the real first time we got to see these two go head-to-head, and it was a really nice showing. The two quarterbacks led masterful drives in the first half. It was even 10 apiece, and even in midway through the third quarter, it was 17 all. Jalen had 4 total touchdowns on the day, 1 through the air, 3 on the ground, and Joe Burrow started off really hot, converted several third down conversions, and I thought that it was going to be a long day. I think the difference was that before this game even started, we learned that T. Higgins was going to be missing the game due to a quad injury he sustained in Friday's practice, and he didn't even come on Sunday to give it a go. He wasn't there for warm-ups, and they just declared him inactive. So you're down T. Higgins, where it's just Jamar Chase and Gesicki, who both of those guys had pretty solid days, but you're just undermanned with a team like the Eagles that has Devontae Smith, who caught a touchdown off of Jalen Hurts. You have A.J. Brown, an all-world wide receiver. You have Saquon Barkley, who was bottled up for most of the game, but later gashed the Bengals late to close out the victory for over 100 yards rushing. The Eagles just have too much firepower for a team like the Bengals, and now they sit at 3-5. I mean, they gave it a valiant effort, I thought, but they just don't have the horses for a team like the Eagles. And 3-5 at this point. And this was a missed opportunity because you have the Ravens coming up soon, but with the Ravens losing and you losing as well, it is looking like the Bengals' slow start this year might be too much to overcome. I thought that victories over the Browns and the Giants were something to consider, but regardless, they just have to eke out these type of victories. That margin of victory was closer than what it was looking like against the New York Giants, and then they were in control, but then kind of gave up some control against the Browns late. Now, I mean, the Bengals are 3-5. You're sitting at third place in the division. It's a very, very competitive conference. You really have to look at the Bengals and say, like, they really missed their window. They had an opportunity in the Super Bowl, didn't execute. Next year could have gotten back, missed some things, and ever since then they've just been trying to get back to recapturing that 2021 magic, but we just haven't seen that. For the Eagles, this was an all-round victory, and I don't think we can put this as a statement victory just because the Bengals were sub 500 coming into this game, but I think the Bengals, outside of the opening night game in Sao Paulo with the Green Bay Packers, this was their best victory. Good competition, opposing quarterback, and I mean, this was, I think, their best victory in over 2 years, since the Super Bowl, really, because 2023, they did start off 10-1, but it was a lot of one-possession games, no dominant victories like we've seen in the last couple of weeks. Even lower-level competition they would play around with and just eke out one possession victory. Well, last 2 games they score 55 points and only give up 20, and defense is forcing turnovers, getting sacks, generating pressure, and that's credit to Vic Fangio and his team. I think the defense has really picked it up since the bye week. That was coming at the perfect time for them to get right. They got some new personnel in there. They figured out how to utilize Bryce Huff, and Nolan Smith, after struggling for his rookie year, he has sacks in 3 consecutive games. And Cooper DeJean, I think, has been a monumental difference. Him being installed in the slot corner position has been great. There was a sequence where the game was hanging in the balance for the Cincinnati Bengals. They were down 7. They decided to go for it from inside their own 40-yard line, and you know the ball is going to Jamar Chase, and it's a bubble screen at this point. There's a lot of motion, but Cooper DeJean is there stride for stride, going back and forth, side to side, and then he navigates traffic pretty well on his side of the field on the line of scrimmage, and he tracks down Jamar Chase, stops him in his tracks, loss of the play, and that was basically the game, because the Eagles go up by 10 after that with a field goal and then have a touchdown to really ice the game. And like I said, the defense is coming along. Offense had its best showing, and I think now they're really putting things together. The schedule really worked out after a slow 2-2 start, that they could figure out some wins and put some wins together. Now it's a 3-game winning streak. They have the Jags next week, and I don't think that's an easy gimme game, but it certainly is a game that they should win, knock on wood. But now they have an opportunity to really get back into the NFC's best bunch, because they're looking like they're turning a corner. I still need to see a little bit more, but it certainly is a step in the right direction. And I think the Eagles are on their way back to being NFC contenders. This Ravens team is super frustrating, man. I mean, the first couple of games, they lose to the Chiefs and the Raiders. I can excuse the Chiefs game. They're just really good, so be it. But against Jameis Winston and the Browns, they drop a game 29-24, and I have a lot of concerns about this Ravens defense. Mike McDonald's is coaching the Seattle Seahawks at this point, and he didn't take too many members of their personnel from last year over to Seattle, but it's maybe the identity, because the concepts and how the defense is flowing right now isn't all that great. I think Van Noy has been good as a pass rusher, and we saw Marlon Humphrey get after it last week, but he's missing in this game, and he was greatly missed because Eddie Jackson just isn't the same type of safety he used to be. Marcus Williams got exposed, and Jameis Winston comes off the bench after sitting there for a few weeks and took advantage of his opportunity, had 3 touchdowns on the day in the game-winning drive. And it's clear now, with just even 1 game in this year for Jameis Winston, that Kevin Stefanski's offense still is very effective, and they just needed the right guy to pilot it, because previous weeks it was quarterbacked by a guy that just is incompetent and is washed in this league. But now we see Jameis Winston, and he kind of fits the mold where this is a guy that has had some struggles early on in his career, but he gets back into Stefanski's scheme. We saw that last year with Joe Flacco. We've seen it before with Baker Mayfield in 2020, that Stefanski has a QB-friendly offense, but they just need the right guy to lead this team. And it might be a little bit too late. I mean, 2-6 is still a very big hole to dig yourself out of, but it's definitely clear that the offense is quite competent. And I mean, congrats to Jameis. I mean, he's been through a lot in his career, and to see him have this opportunity and show the gratefulness as well, I think was very wholesome. And he's able to get this offense going. I mean, Njoku had his best game of the year. Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy each had their best games of the year. And then shout out to Cedric Tillman. I mean, 2 touchdowns, almost 100 yards receiving. This team now is obviously without Amari Cooper, but I thought this was their best showing offensively in quite some time. I mean, they cracked 20 points for the first time all year. That's showing you what the difference is in quarterback play. For the Ravens, still really concerned about their defense. I mean, offensively, they did play to win. I think their defense has let them down. Kyle Hamilton dropped the game-ending pick, and pretty much the next couple of plays was the game-winning touchdown to Cedric Tillman. And that's just really frustrating because now you're 5-3. You have an opportunity to really, at least going into this game, cut into this Chiefs deficit, but still you're now 3 games back in the loss column. I think there's no chance of them getting home field, and they're still behind in this division. Steelers won on Monday Night Football, so they are still ahead in the loss column there. So divisional play is going to be really, really important. This is the hardest division in sports. And I think another thing I'm a little concerned with, I'm not ready to say like, oh, wave a red flag, but it's Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker just hasn't been the same this year. It's been a little bit off. I mean, he's the best long-range kicker I've ever seen. He makes 50-yard kicks look so easy, but this year it's a little bit off. And I mean, this is a minor step back from his amazing grace at the position. He's been probably the best kicker of all time. It may not reflect the points, but if you have a kick and you need 60 yards, I trust Justin Tucker to get that done. This year, he's been a little bit off. I mean, missed kick against the Cleveland Browns here, and it's just been a couple of kicks that I think he wishes he had back this year. So that's something to monitor. I mean, maybe Father Time is getting to Justin Tucker. I mean, Father Time is undefeated and does claim people like Justin Tucker eventually, but I'm not ready to say that just yet. Something to keep note of to go forward. But the Ravens certainly have a lot of work to do because this was a letdown game after building up to a 5-game win streak coming into this weekend. The New York Jets have hit rock bottom. They've lost to the New England Patriots without Drake May and allowing Jacoby Brissett to drive down the field and score a game-winning touchdown pass. In this process now, they haven't won since beating Jacoby Brissett and the Patriots on Thursday Night Football. And since then, the wheels have fallen completely off. It's been a 5-game losing streak at this point. They're 2-6. And honestly, whatever playoff hopes they had coming into this game are next to none at this point. 2-6 is a extremely hard hole to dig yourself out of. I think they are cooked, they are done, and it is absolutely over for the New York Jets. And again, I think it comes back to Robert Saleh's firing, where it takes away from Jeff Ulbrich to coach the defense. He has to manage the entire roster, and we haven't seen anything really offensively change. I mean, Davante Adams has been there now for 2 weeks, and they haven't looked anything too different. I think they have shown some spurts here and there, but it's still not the same of what we expected out of this team. Rodgers is limited. He is now a pocket passer at this point, let's just be honest. And they just have a lot of holes at this point. These are just a lot of bad moves conglomerating together, because Woody Johnson put together this team. He allowed Joe Douglas to assemble this team. And since Joe Douglas has been the Jets GM, he's compiled a 29-62 record. That's just not really good at all. And I think at this point, this is one of the most embarrassing, most disappointing seasons or teams in recent NFL history. I mean, the expectations this year was playoffs because Aaron got what he wanted to. He got all his guys. He got his offensive line a little bit more bolstered. The defense is still relatively the same. More weapons on the outside, even brought in Davante Adams, and you still can't get it done, man. He can put on this whole mumbo jumbo to the media, shrug it off, acting like he doesn't care, act like we doubt him, when actually, no, we don't even doubt him. We've given up on him because we came in with expectations that he was going to try and do what Peyton Manning did with the Broncos to what Tom Brady did with the Buccaneers. Well, it's been the opposite of that. I mean, throughout last year, because he hurt his Achilles, that's fine. But this year's been absolutely abysmal. And to be honest, the Jets just need to restart this. They gave it a try, but it's just not working. And they're done, they're cooked, whatever you want to call it, but this has just been an absolute embarrassment. The Lions hang 50 on the Tennessee Titans, and this was just another game where the Detroit Lions just showcased their talent, and this time it was in all three phases of the game. I mean, special teams was the star in this game, I thought. Defense too, they forced 4 turnovers and they set their offense up at short fields as well as special teams. But Khalif Raymond had a day. He had 2 touchdowns, but one was an amazing 90-yard punt return for a touchdown. And even on their kickoff game, they had a long return as well as setting themselves up with a short field. Jared Goff didn't even need to pass for 100 yards, and the combination of Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic as in Jahmyr Gibbs had over 100 yards rushing, and he's been hot the last couple of weeks. And then David Montgomery, Knuckles, had a passing touchdown dating back to his high school quarterback days. That was a mind-blowing fact that I did not know. But he was indeed a quarterback, and he passed to Sam Laporta for a touchdown. And at this point, the Lions are just having fun. I mean, they've shaken off the trauma of losing Aiden Hutchinson. Expect the trade to come out soon. We'll see what happens when the deadline passes, but the Lions are absolutely the NFC's best team, and I honestly think they're better than the Chiefs at this point just because they have been consistent. They've been blowing out teams, and I think that they're just bound for the Super Bowl at this point. The Atlanta Falcons go down to Tampa Bay, and in the first matchup between these two teams, it was a really fun game. Thursday Night Football, Kirk Cousins goes off for 505 yards as a walk-off touchdown. And the Bucs are definitely battered and bruised. They lost their top 2 receivers. Mike Evans is going to be out for a couple weeks with a hamstring strain, and Chris Godwin unfortunately looks like to be done for the season due to a ankle injury he sustained late in the Monday night loss to the Baltimore Ravens. And it's a shame because he was on a tear, and Baker Mayfield's also been on a tear, and he has to find a way to navigate this now without his top 2 guys, and the schedule doesn't get any better. I mean, next week is Monday night against the Kansas City Chiefs. That's just a really tough outlook right now for the Buccaneers, and dropping this game basically ends their chances of winning this division at 4-4, 2.5 games back. You've been swept by the Falcons. It's just unfortunate timing for these Buccaneers because they're a fun team, they're a gritty team, but I just don't think they have enough horses to survive this stretch without their top 2 receivers. For the Falcons, I thought this was a good victory. The final margin was 31-26, but they did go into the fourth quarter up 2 possessions. And if it wasn't thanks to a safety, I think that they did get a stop off a Baker Mayfield interception. It was returned inside the 10-yard line, but bad snap resulted in a safety, kind of set off a chain of events to get the Bucs back into the game. They did score a touchdown, and Younghoe Koo missed a field goal, but I still think the Falcons were firm control out of this, but something I did want to address was the lack of replay, because we did talk in our previous podcast about the NFL should expand replay. You can go check that out. I'll link it for you guys in the description. But in that video, I talked about expanding replay to face mask, but I didn't know that in these lower profile games, and this was a game done by Fox, that they didn't have goal line cameras in this, the pylon cam. That was really, really strange, I thought, because there was a sequence where Kyle Pitts is running towards the goal line, and I mean, the call on the field was a touchdown. It was hard to see with the naked eye, but if you do slow it down, and we just never got the proper angle to confirm and have clear, concise evidence to overturn the call. But Antoine Winfield makes a great play to at least make it questionable, and he slaps the ball out, but we just don't know if Kyle Pitts broke the plane or not, because I think there was a really real case that if we had that technology available to us, we could have known, and it could have been overturned because that went out the end zone for a touchback. So something to look into. But the Falcons win. They are coasting now to the NFC South title, and now it's just a matter of just getting the offense ready to go for the postseason. At this point, they got to stay healthy. They got to stay calm, cool, and collected, because I think this division was theirs to lose. They handled their toughest opponent, and now it's like, how do they navigate the rest of the NFC foes? Next week is against Dallas, and I think it's just another prove-it game because they did drop a home game to Seattle a couple weeks ago. Disappointing result there, but absolutely another opponent that I think that this offense can blow out of the water. Tua Tagovailoa is back, and I think with him taking some time, he was on IR with the concussion that he sustained in week 2 against the Buffalo Bills. He took some time to reflect, and with that decision, he's absolutely not hanging it up. He's coming back to play football. That's fine, but I did wish that he would play with a Guardian cap because he's been susceptible to not just concussions, but nasty concussions. And thankfully in this game, he did slide to protect himself. But I mean, the amount of animosity, the rejection to the notion of wearing a Guardian cap because it's a personal preference. I understand conceptually it is your body, your choice. But, I mean, the facts are there. The Guardian caps do protect players pretty well. It does lower the risk of concussions. It adds an extra layer of padding to a very susceptible structure that we've seen him take a bunch of hits to. And I think all football fans are definitely rooting for Tua's best interest here. Now, getting into the game, the Arizona Cardinals come into Miami and steal a victory yet again. This team has been very gritty. I think as long as this team can kind of hang around, keep the game close, Kyler Murray and this Cardinals team really knows how to get it done late. They beat the LA Chargers late on a walk-off field goal, and they did it again to another tough AFC foe in the Miami Dolphins. And yet again, it was a walk-off field goal. Tough win on the road, but shout out to the rookie duo of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. Both went off for over 100 yards receiving, and while Marvin Harrison Jr. gets the lion's shares of the bulk of the headlines, and same thing goes for Brock Bowers for tight ends, for rookies at least. We do know that Trey McBride is a stud tight end in this league. I think he's been really, really good. It's just that he doesn't get a lot of shine just due to being overshadowed by Brock Bowers and Marvin Harrison Jr. on his own team. But I thought that these two were really instrumental to the Cardinals' victory. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. laid out for a couple really nice plays, a touchdown, and basically a big conversion as Kyler was fading towards getting sacked, but managed to get off a good ball to give Marvin a chance at the ball. And yet again, Kyler is getting it done, and the Cardinals, through halfway point of the season, are leading the NFC West with 2 crucial wins over the 49ers on the road and the LA Rams. And I think this division is really up for grabs. It's anyone's guess who's going to win this thing, but it's going to be fun to see. Who knows? But this Cardinals team is feisty. They know how to really muck up a game. They will scratch and claw to get any victory that they can. Who's to say that they don't win the NFC West due to just grit and grind? The 49ers remain the Dallas Cowboys boogeyman after another loss on Sunday Night Football to this very team on 3 previous occasions, twice in the playoffs. The 49ers just have the Cowboys number. No matter how bad the 49ers may look, no matter how injured the 49ers may look, they find a way to beat the Dallas Cowboys. And yet again, sans Brandon Ayuk and sans Christian McCaffrey, they beat the Dallas Cowboys. And honestly, the final margin was 30-24, but despite trailing after halftime 10-6, they reeled off 3 consecutive touchdowns. They were up 27-10 going into the final frame, and then garbage time Dak appeared for 2 touchdown passes to make it a ball game. But San Francisco, when needed to, their defense showed up and shut that thing down. No comeback at all. And remember that they did force 2 turnovers off Dak earlier, and he had a stat line of 2 interceptions, no touchdowns heading into the final frames. Him and CD may be able to get a lot of yards when they want to, when the defense is just saying, we're not going to give you the deep ball, but you can have a lot of underneath stuff, take a lot of time, be your guess. And that's stat padding. That's classic Dak Prescott there. And for a man that's making $60 million, you think that this guy could rally the troops, but it's not just him that's living to below expectations. Remember, this guy has now passed for multiple interceptions in 3 consecutive games. But the other aspect, I think, is this roster construction. Jerry Jones has been the CEO, the owner, the GM for countless years. And since Jimmy Johnson left this team and it was up to Jerry to construct the roster, it's showing that Jerry doesn't have a grasp on how to run an NFL franchise. Remember, Jimmy Johnson constructed the 90s Cowboys. He was the guy that led the way to give them the dynasty, 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. And since his departure, it's been now 3 decades almost since they've even sniffed the NFC Championship game. And remember that as long as Jerry Jones is living and breathing, this team will never compete for titles. They will never compete to be winners. They'll always be about clicks and headlines and doing anything else other than winning football games and winning championships. The Indianapolis Colts are benching Anthony Richardson after drafting him 4th overall in last year's draft. Anthony Richardson wowed scouts with showcasing his rocket arm, throwing balls all over the field, very deep passes. And after last year where we didn't see a lot of him due to a shoulder injury he sustained, it basically was his redo of his rookie year. We knew that there weren't a lot of expectations, but we just wanted to see how his development transpired after basically 2 full years and a redshirt year of development. And while we've seen that there hasn't been a lot of strides made, especially in the short and intermediate part of his game, we can see that he can still chuck the ball deep, and that's pretty much the best throw that he has. And it's a lot of boom or bust type of plays. And simply to play quarterback in the NFL, you have to be somebody that can make the short to the intermediate type of passes, because I mean, look at it at his passing stats. The accuracy is just not there. Anthony Richardson has an accuracy problem. And we can see basically playing about 5 games of full starts, start to finish, that he can't even complete even 50% of his passes. And to add further insult to injury, on Sunday against the Houston Texans, he completed 10 out of 32 of his passes. And we can see that the decision making is not there. He's forcing throws, and just the offense is really handcuffed with him under center. When he is in the lineup, we haven't seen the Colts offense work to its full capacity. And in the games that he missed due to injury, Joe Flacco, who is their backup this year, has looked a lot better. And Shane Steichen had to come up with the difficult decision to bench Anthony Richardson after a poor showing against the Houston Texans. I think the other nuance in this is that in a sequence where Anthony Richardson was scrambling around trying to bide time to make something happen downfield, it ended up just being a 1-yard gain. But due to that whole episode where he ran around a lot, but I understand you're tired, but he tapped his head and essentially asked to be subbed out for a play. And this throws the whole play calling out of whack. You're scrambling at this point to get Joe Flacco onto the field. And this is just unheard of. What quarterback subs out of a play if it's not due to an injury? And in the post-game presser, he's coming off a little bit too honest and just saying that he's tired. And that's just a very, very bad look. Like I said, it's unheard of in the NFL. Offensive linemen don't get a chance to sub out. They're blocking big guys that are trying to take off your head, and you ask them to continue to do so just so you can get a break. That is unheard of in this league. I think it's just a combination where Shane Steichen had to come up with the decision. Do we go with a guy that's also not productive, but now is also potentially losing the respect of his teammates who are coming out, play in and play out, competing at the highest level, giving it their all, when this guy has to tap out to say that he's tired? I understand other positions like running backs and defensive linemen and wide receivers, they get to come out for a couple plays. But quarterback is where you get different expectations, different standards. That's just part of the deal. And unfortunately for now, Anthony Richardson is going to have to sit for a little bit, maybe learn something under Joe Flacco's arm, because Joe has been an established quarterback in this league. He's done really good with helping young quarterbacks grow and develop. We saw that with his days in Baltimore where he helped Lamar Jackson out in his rookie year. And last year, Joe Flacco took the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs when all hope was lost. And the Colts right now are very much still alive in the playoff mix. They're 4-4, playing 500 ball. Maybe don't have a chance at the division, but I think they still have a shot at those wild card spot. They're only a half game out behind the 4-3 LA Chargers at this point of this recording, and I think this is just a move that had to be made. This is a guy who can galvanize a locker room, people have respect for, and at this point you have to prioritize winning than developing a quarterback. And for the long-term outlook for Anthony Richardson, I don't know how long he'll be benched, maybe for the rest of the season, but it's going to be a very tall telling sign that if he doesn't make any strides, if he does get another chance this year and there hasn't been any adjustments in his game, that the Colts really missed at another quarterback, and they'll probably have to come back to the drawing board to find another quarterback in this revolving door of quarterbacks we've seen since Andrew Luck retired. So that's it for this episode of Spectator Sports. Remember guys, if you want to help this channel grow, reach a broader audience, please do us a massive favor. Drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and if you want to get clips from today's episode, we have this for you here on YouTube as well on TikTok, and you want to get the audio experience, we got that for you on Spotify. Links in the description. Shout out to Joey for editing this podcast, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care everybody.